The Chargers currently are projected to have the third most salary cap space, but with several needed cuts, they could have over $100 million to spend this offseason.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 10 seasons, but this is our 8th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day as part of the #1 sports podcast network. David, what do we got today?
Well, Daniel, as you mentioned, the Chargers are already going to be in a very healthy spot when it comes to salary cap space in 2026, but there is also some very obvious cuts, especially on the offensive line, where it seems like the Chargers could part ways with Mekhi Becton and Bradley Bozeman. And we'll also talk about the curious case of Will Dissly and what to do there. And at the end of the show, we'll take a look at some potential extension candidates. Tuli Tuipulotu is absolutely at the top of that list.
Yeah, with what he's done at 23 years old, you might want to get that one done sooner rather than later. Yeah, absolutely. But David, we did want to talk about with free agency looming over the next couple of weeks, right, and how the Chargers kind of prime themselves to take full advantage of a team that has enough money to make some major changes. There's a way to make even more. So, I mean, let's look at it right now. According to Over the Cap, which is basically what we almost always use, with the Teair Tart contract accounted for, the Chargers have over $83 million in salary cap space. That puts them third in the NFL right now. There are some obvious moves to be made that can clear up over $20 million more to use in 2026. Now, the numbers we're talking about are somewhat subjective because you have to save money for the draft, you have to save money for in-season budget and all of those things. But the window is right now for the Chargers. So keep the bare minimum that you have to and find as many ways to improve this roster. But it starts with opening up as much space as you can open up. And I think the most obvious cut candidate, because of just how badly this marriage has gone so far for the Chargers, is Mekhi Becton, which is also the most likely move for them to make the most space possible.
No question about it. After doing so well with the Eagles, playing guard and winning a Super Bowl, he didn't really come anywhere close to that level of production. He's definitely a presence. He's a mountain of a man, but he just wasn't good. And, you look at it, Mekhi Becton ranked dead last in run block grade out of 63 guards with a 34.3 grade. And this is minimum 500 snaps. And then even pass blocking grade, 59th out of 63 guards. With a 45.2 minimum 500 snaps. We're just talking historically one of the worst guards in the National Football League, and it was not even particularly close. It was terrible, and the Chargers can save a substantial amount of money by cutting him approximately $9.7 million while only taking on $2.5 million in dead cap space. So this right here, this is a slam dunk home run. It is definitely gonna happen.
Yeah, no, I mean, especially with the comments at the end of the season, basically saying he was just never comfortable in the offense. He did a lot of, the Chargers did a lot of things, or Greg Roman did a lot of things that they weren't comfortable with. But yeah, I mean, like you said, third most pressures allowed out of any guard in the NFL, 6th most quarterback hits, and that's what this is all about, right? Not letting Justin Herbert take as many hits as he did last year. And I think more than that, too, it was just a ton of quick losses, right?
Yeah,
it's one thing
too many
to kind of hold your ground and eventually give your quarterback a chance. It's another thing to just completely whiff on someone, to just totally misread a situation, go the wrong way, and there was just a way too much of that.
Not finish games, constantly deal with injuries. Yeah.
And that's the thing, too. That was the biggest kind of red flag for him coming to the Chargers, and you hoped that he could kind of continue what he had the last couple of years where he stayed relatively healthy. And then when you look at it, you see, hey, he played in 15 games. He missed one game in the last week of the season just because the Chargers didn't need the game, right? So you can't even hold that one against him. But it was just the amount of games that he had to leave early and just left in the middle of and returned and just wasn't right. But I think more than that, kind of schematically, David, it's just not a fit with Mike McDaniel, right? I mean, this is a move
not at all.
that gets the Chargers up to $93 million in cap space from that first number we started with at 83. The reason you have to do it, right, is because it's not a fit. It didn't work last year, and there's no reason to think it's going to work better now that Mike McDaniel's in charge.
Absolutely not. I think when you look at what Mike McDaniel does, especially in the running game, going from a gap scheme under Greg Roman to more of a zone run blocking scheme, really it depends on your offensive lineman to be athletic and to be able to explode out and to be able to climb to the second level, pick off defenders, and to be able to open up holes on the run. And that's just not who Mekhi Becton is. He just doesn't have the athleticism to be able to do that. So, he wasn't good last year, and he's not a schematic fit for where the Chargers are going offensively. This is a cut that the Chargers are going to make.
Almost certainly. And it's just not an offense that has as much use for a 6'7", 360-pound guard, because so much of it is based on movement and hitting targets at the second level and being able to reach those targets. Because the thing is when you have somebody who's athletically challenged, right, which for his size at guard is just going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
That, lessens the creativity that you can have offensively, because you can drop the most exotic plays that you want. If you don't have the guys to go hit those marks and be able to cover these guys up,
it won't matter.
It's just not going to matter, right? And then we saw that way too much. And I think the big thing was, too, is the Chargers in multiple occasions, and we'll talk about another one, have gone with guys who are better run blockers than pass protectors. And that was the issue, is you got these guys with the sole kind of intention of helping your run game to help Justin Herbert, and that way give yourself manageable, down in distances. And it backfired because the guys weren't good at run blocking either. And you still ended up with one of the worst run blocking offensive lines in the NFL. But in an offense based on movement, based on getting on the move, hitting moving targets, it's just not a fit for Mekhi Becton. And you also have to, pair that with just the terrible, protection that he gave to Justin Herbert in 2025. But the other one here that has to be gone, it feels like at this point, is Bradley Bozeman. This is a move that would save them $5.9 million, getting them from that first number now up to $99 million in salary cap space. And David, the Chargers, the frustrating thing about this is this shouldn't really be a conversation, because the Chargers shouldn't have brought him back after 2024.
Absolutely not. I mean, he wasn't good after that season, and he was horrible last year. I mean, if we want to put it just quite frankly, dead last in run block grade out of 34 centers. There's only 32 teams. Okay, so that's absolutely atrocious. 32 of 34 in pass block grade with a 49.2. We're just talking like a guy who has a calling card of being a road grader, a guy who can really control things and move people out of the way. He couldn't even do that effectively last year. So this is just something again. He's not going to fit in this new scheme with Mike McDaniel. It's the same exact situation as Mekhi Becton. He's a gigantic center at 6'5", 6'6", 330 pounds. It's just not the profile. I mean, you look at the center that the Miami Dolphins had, Aaron Brewer, I believe. He's much smaller.
Go watch Aaron Brewer and what they asked of him, and ask yourself if you think that Bradley Bozeman could do the things that Mike McDaniel was asking Aaron Brewer to do last season, right? It's pretty much simple.
I'll save you the time. The answer is absolutely not. No way on God's green earth is he capable of doing that. So this is just a move that makes too much sense financially, and from a perspective of just not being able to fit the offense and not be able to provide the type of production or level of play that your quarterback demands going forward.
And like Becton, right? This is someone, brought in to fit with Greg Roman's scheme. And in Bradley Bozeman's case, it feels like a big reason why he was back is because Greg Roman gave the vote of confidence to have him be the center, right? And we saw them try to make Zion Johnson the center. It was a total mess from the very beginning. And Bradley Bozeman seems like a great guy. This coaching staff loved him, but they didn't turn on him basically until after the season, where there was just really no defending him. And he's saying, hey, you're not in the meeting rooms, while he's having his kind of exit from the locker room day, saying, hey, they're basically telling me I'm doing a good job. It wasn't good enough. And beyond just like how well you pass protect one-on-one, how well you run block one-on-one, as a center, you have the extra layer of the protections that you have to be able to set, and that has been a complete mess over the last 2 years. And Justin Herbert probably takes, a fair amount of the blame in that as well. But those things weren't happening when you had a cerebral guy there like a Corey Linsley, right? And we saw how much that can help, even if you were working with lesser around you. Like, it was not nearly good enough from Bradley Bozeman. Too many quick losses. Again, Chargers already fired their offensive line coach, so they've already told you how much kind of a problem they think that specific position group is, even before Mike McDaniel was hired, right? It can't happen again. Like, he's a great dude. Like, I hope he bounces back somewhere else, but the Chargers already ran it back one too many times. They're going to have to take a little bit of dead cap hit, but do the right thing. No sunken cost fallacy. You have to restructure this entire interior offensive line, and it starts with losing Mekhi Becton and Bradley Bozeman. But that's not the only thing they can do, because they could also decide to part ways with Will Dissly, who is the best run blocker, but fell out of favor with the coaching staff. Could he be back, or will he be a cap casualty? We'll get into all that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, though, I need to tell you guys about TurboTax, because tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or the guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. And you can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives a real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, all you have to do, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off of your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. David, we talked about the two kind of big money guys the Chargers could release and end up having, to find some extra space to rework this offensive line. And that's the thing, right? Every guy you release is a position that has to be filled. By, losing Bradley Bozeman, you have to do it, but now you have to find a starting center, right? Losing Mekhi Becton means you have to find a new starting right guard. And that would be the case with Will Dissly as well, in the role that he was bringing to this team. 2 years into a 3-year contract. He has 1 year left, but the Chargers, by releasing him, could save $4 million, which from that original number now puts them $103 million in cap space. So we've already hit 20 plus more million than they had going into it. That's a big number to get to, David. And Will Dissly, a guy known for his run blocking ability, did what he could as the main receiving option in 2024. But as soon as they had other options, it felt like he totally fell out of favor this year and was a healthy scratch in several games, meaning he's definitely on the cap casualty list.
Yeah, I mean, when you're getting replaced by an undrafted free agent that they brought in to be the main blocker, then yeah, you got some big problems on the horizon.
Yeah.
Like, the writing was on the wall for him when he only played 9 games this year, and it wasn't because of health. He was a healthy scratch for many of those games. He only played 189 snaps this past season, and he caught 11 passes on 15 targets for 97 yards. Nothing to run home about. He wasn't actually very good as a run blocker, according to the grades. I had to filter it down pretty far, because he only played 189 snaps. So filtered to 75 snaps. He was 42nd out of 50 tight ends with a 61.7 run block grade. He was a much better pass protector, though, 15th out of 50 in pass block grade with a 74.3. So he did some decent things there as an extra blocker, as a pass protector. Not great as a run blocker. And we talked about it on yesterday's show. And with Mike McDaniel, they might want to have someone who is more of an all-around tight end, a little bit more of a receiving threat, and that's never been Will Dissly's game. So as far as the offense, it might not fit, but also just production-wise and where we're already heading, just seems like this is something that's heading towards divorce.
I think so too. The other part of it is, it feels like Andy Bischoff could have been, a big reason they brought him in, who was the run game coordinator and the tight ends coach. And his famous quote about Will Dissly was, "There's not many tight ends that can own the C gap." And like in his first year, he was a very good run blocking tight end, a better one than they'd had in a while when they were in the Jared Cook and Gerald Everett kind of mercenary years that we saw after Hunter Henry. But yeah, like, if you don't have use for him as a receiving option, he doesn't really have the athleticism to kind of be that move blocker that you're putting into motion to go try to pick people off. It doesn't feel like he's a fit. We know he's not a great receiver. If you're not a dominant run blocker, and you could be, that production could be replaced by a Tucker Fisk, who you could bring back super cheap if you really want to.
Yeah.
Just doesn't make a lot of sense. But I thought he still should have been in there, especially later on in the year. It was kind of a mystery to me why they kind of just let him fall off and not play. I think he's partially special teams, but like Tyler Conklin wasn't an impact special teams player either. So didn't make much sense to me. But let's switch over to the defensive side here, because there is one really obvious cut. And again, kind of in the Bradley Bozeman boat as far as we shouldn't be having to have this conversation right now because the Chargers should have been out of this contract. And that is Bud Dupree. Chargers edge rusher 4 for them this year after the Donte Jackson trade. But the Chargers would save $3.5 million by making this move, getting them up to $106.6 million in salary cap space in 2026, David. Yeah, this is one that has to happen.
Oh, it's going to happen for sure. I mean, the dead cap here is a measly $250,000. Like that's nothing. You're going to save $3.4 million. He played 16 games. He had 16 tackles, 2 sacks, 19 pressures, 2 tackles for loss, and a passes defense. But the real story here is his pass rush win rate was 5.3, which ranked 89th out of 91 potential edge rushers. Yeah. So we're talking about one of the worst edge rushers in the league. And so you just can't. You can't bring him back. You can very reasonably expect to find someone who can provide that type of production for less money, who maybe be cheaper, or just get more out of that, that edge 4 position. I just think this is one that's going to happen, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, third worst pass rushing grade, 2 sacks and 202 pass rushing snaps. So, right, every 100 times he's rushing the passer, he's getting a sack is what that's telling you. 19 pressures on the season, but yeah, 5.3% win percentage. To show you what a good one looks like, Donte Jackson ranked 16th in the league. His was 16.4, so over 3 times better than what you're getting. Another part of it is there was the argument kind of like, well, at least you kind of have a stout run defender, somebody who can set the edge. And maybe, it's hard to kind of quantify setting the edge, but he wasn't good as a run defender. And he ranked 72 out of 85 edge rushers in run stop percentage, only 6 defensive stops all season against the run. So if you're not being able, it's kind of similar to the offensive line. If you're not a good run blocker or a pass blocker, what's the point, right? And
what's the redeeming quality here?
Yeah, it seems like a great locker room guy. It seemed like they obviously did him a solid by adding on the extra year to his contract. But in my mind, even with the Kyle Kennard kind of mystery there, and Donte Jackson and Khalil Mack still unsigned at this point for the 2026 season, you could get more out of an undrafted free agent.
Yeah.
Period. So there's no point to keep him. One last interesting one here, David, is J.K. Scott. Chargers would save almost $3 million, $2.85 million, and that would get them up to almost $110 million in salary cap space. Is J.K. Scott on the move after a couple of seasons in LA?
Yeah, this one I think is very much in the eye of the beholder, depending on what you want out of your punter. So when you look at Mr. J.K. Scott, he was 4th in punt grade in the NFL according to PFF with an 88.1, and a large portion of that, or a large part of that, is because he does a great job of limiting the amount of returns, and he does that via his hang time, which was first in the NFL again at 4.8 seconds, which just means that the ball is in the air so long that the coverage teams are already able to get down there and prevent any type of returns, which he was 3rd in fair catches with 23rd, 3rd in yards per return, but he was 18th in net average. So he doesn't have the biggest leg. He wasn't very good in the, the directional kicks, in that avenue. So
yeah, I think in the yards per return, I think it's 3rd worst. I think
third worst. Third worst. So it wasn't great from that perspective. So it's just, what do you want out of your punter? It seems like the last few years, the Chargers were, content with just having a guy that limited the amount of returns and sacrificed some of that leg strength in return.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's hard because he came up small in some big moments for the Chargers, specifically that Texans game, right?
Shanks.
Couple of shanks that set them up for scoring drives in a game where scoring was very limited. That sucked. But yeah, it ranked 19th in punts inside the 10, 8th in punts inside the 5, that's top 10. 11th in yards per punt. But I think you have to look a little bit more closely because there were times where he outkicked his coverage. And although I'm not high on the Chargers punt coverage unit at all, I think part of that was because of the space that was allowed when they were able to return. And the Chargers gave up the most 20-plus yard punt returns in the league with 6 of them. His longest punt of the season, the Chargers' longest punt, was 60 yards, which is 3rd lowest of any team in the league. And also, he had the 3rd worst opponent starting field positions after punts, according to Tree Media, meaning after J.K. Scott's punts, the Chargers were 3rd worst as far as how far they're pinning their opponent back on average. So think you have to look a little deeper in that one. Ryan Ficken seems like he has a great relationship with him. They've been content for having all the hang time. But it would be interesting to see if they could go in a different direction, because even in some of the better stats he has, it's hard to think those aren't replaceable and you can't find someone for less than $3 million. Then again, that $3 million probably isn't going to be the difference between you signing, a big time free agent or not. So if they want to keep him, it's not going to kill them in the pocketbook too much. But we still have more to get into because we talked about potential cap casualty. What about a couple of potential extensions? We know the big one in Tuli Tuipulotu, which could come this offseason. But what about Derwin James, who kind of surprisingly is heading into the last year of his deal? We're getting into all that and more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, I need to tell you guys about FanDuel, because the winter games are officially here. And if you're anything like us, you're locking in for events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. And that's why following the winter games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports you care about most, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action. I've been enamored with curling. Even when it's not live, I've been watching it, and it's distracting me from doing my notes. The drama of curling matches that start slow and somehow get intense fast. Speed skating, which I wouldn't have said, hey, I'm a super big speed skater fan, but I've watched a lot of it so far in these Winter Olympics. But FanDuel keeps the entire Olympic experience engaging from start to finish. And the one thing I'm going to be looking at is U.S. hockey, who plays this morning against Latvia. And they're huge favorites, but if you get specific, you could get Brady Tkachuk to score a goal at plus 130. Or if you think Austin Matthews could get 2+ goals, you can get that at plus 700. The winter games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. All right, David, we talked about the Chargers and their cap casualties and the guys that could basically help them get up to $27 million more, somewhere around that, as far as what they could get as far as total cap space. And obviously it's not effective cap space, but the bigger the number, the better. But there are a couple of extensions that might not kick in this year, but could be the time to kind of strike on them while the iron is hot. And it starts with the most obvious extension. I don't know if Tuli Tuipulotu will hold out if he doesn't get an extension, but coming off the season that he just had, being 6th in sacks in the league with 13, and you having the chance to extend him right now, he feels like the most obvious candidate to get locked up in the long term.
Oh, my goodness, yes. I mean, it's very rare that you have somebody who's at this point in his NFL career and is still only 23 years old. I mean, he has so much of his prime in front of him that it's super exciting that you have somebody who is really starting to hit their stride. And this was the first year he got his chance, right, to be the top guy, and he did not disappoint. 13.5 sacks, 10th in total pressures, 20 tackles for loss with 2 forced fumbles. So not only was he getting it done as a pass rusher, he was getting in the backfield and causing havoc and, making sure that they had longer fields that they had to try to overcome. He was fantastic. He also had a pressure rate of 12.9% in 2025, which, puts him in that upper echelon. And when you look at, some of the contracts that were given out that are comparable, I think you look at George Karlaftis at 4 years, $88 million. That's going to be on the very, very low end. And then more recently, I think you can look at Nick Bonito, who signed a 4-year, $106 million contract. I think with Tuli, it's going to be more than that. I think what you're looking at in an extension is probably 4 to 5 years in the $28 to $30 million per season area, and it's probably going to be between 112 and 140 million, with anywhere between 38 and 75 million guaranteed.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know if he's getting more than Nick Bonito. That wasn't one I had really had. I mean, Nick Bonito coming off what now? Been back-to-back 13, 14+ sack seasons. So, I mean, obviously he signed his last offseason, and he was a defensive player of the year candidate for most of the year, and Tuli has not been in that level yet. That late in the season, obviously Nick Bonito's campaign was halted by Rashawn Slater in a late game in Denver that year. But yeah, I think it's tough, right? Because if you're putting him top 10 money in edge rushers, I mean, you're going over 28 million. But a lot of those guys, have shown more production or, are on their third contracts in some of these situations too, where they have more of a track record. Like this was Tuli Tuipulotu's first double-digit sack season, right? He did have 8.5 in his second year, and there aren't many quarter or edge rushers that have had, 26 sacks by the time they've turned 23. Like that's just, pretty impressive. And that youth obviously plays into it. The George Karlaftis one, I think, is the most interesting one. And if I'm the Chargers, that's where I'm going to as far as, hey, how are we going to build this thing? Because similar-ish ages, but George Karlaftis 1 year earlier getting his extension last year, 4 years, $88 million, 22 per season. Would Tuli take 4 for 90? I don't know. Maybe it's a little bit more than that. Would he take 25, 4 for 100? Maybe something along those lines. But George Karlaftis, 24.5 sacks his first 3 seasons. Tuli has 26. That's a 1.5 sack difference, right? Tuli had 161 pressures his first 3 years. Karlaftis had 173. Tuli a pressure every 7.8 snaps. George Karlaftis every 8.4 snaps at 11.8%. Also, George Karlaftis, to get that deal, had back-to-back Super Bowl championship runs where he had 4 sacks in each of those postseasons, right? So averaging at least, over a sack a game during those Super Bowl runs. So that's where I'm going if I'm the Chargers. Obviously, for Tuli, he does have that one big season. But yeah, I'm trying to do it. I think he's in the second tier of kind of elite edge rushers, right? Like, I think it's the Micah Parsons and the Max Crosbys and the Myles Garretts and the Will Anderson Jr.'s and the Danielle Hunters. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think he's on those guys' level. I think he's right underneath that and probably the top of whatever that next level is at this point, 3 seasons in.
And can still get a lot better, which should be really scary for a lot of offensive linemen out there.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if he'll ever be like the most technical guy, obviously, but he's still so young and still struggles with some of the same things, though. He struggled with collegiately, right? Which is having one of the highest missed tackle percentages of any edge rushers right now. We know he is a force as a run defender, which I think keeps his floor extremely high. But I don't think you can pay him $30 to $35 million. I think if he wants that much, I think you have to make him kind of prove it over another season if you're going to be paying him, what guys like Micah Parsons are getting paid. What, those top Myles Garrett
guys are
getting
paid. $40 million a season.
But that's what I'm saying, though. If you're going to tell me that 3 years in, you're going to get 30 to 35 even and be in the top 6 or 7 amongst those guys at the top right there, because you're talking about the very, very top are making 40, but there's more than just, 2 or 3 really good players, right?
Sure.
He's not there, and he shouldn't be getting that kind of money. If he wants that kind of money, I'm going to need to see it again over one more season. But you brought up a good one with Derwin James, who kind of surprisingly, because it doesn't seem like he signed it that long ago, is going into the last year of his contract. This is going to be his age 30 season, and I think you can feel really good about him keeping up this level of play for a little while with Chris O'Leary taking over. Like, the defensive coordinator shift shouldn't take away from what he has been able to do or the resurgence he's had over the last couple of years. Me and you had this discussion before the show. You were saying, hey, 3-year extension, maybe that's what it looks like. For me, optimally, I'm giving like a 2-year, $37 million extension to Derwin James right now. I keep him, in the top 5 safeties as far as what he's getting paid. I'm paying him through his age 32 season. And, in 2 years from now, if we want to come back and he's still playing at that level, that's what I'm doing. That would be my, wish, but that's not necessarily how it would go or if he would agree to do that.
Yeah, so, with that contract, he was making $19 million per season on average, and he's coming off of back-to-back second-team All-Pro seasons. So he's been extremely productive in these past few years. I think you look at the highest point of getting paid as a safety in the league, it's Kyle Hamilton at $25 million per season. I'm not saying Derwin is going to make that much. The big difference there is Kyle Hamilton is 25 years old and Derwin James is 30. So there's just a longevity difference there. However, he recorded a team best 12, my bad. Derwin James, again, had a fantastic season. So I think when we're looking at the contract here for an extension, I did say 2 to 3 years is where I want. Probably 2 with a ripcord after that, that second year, 3 with a ripcord after that second year so they can potentially get out of that deal. But we're probably looking in that, 18 to $20 million per season type of deal here for Derwin.
Yeah, that's where I have him. I have him at, basically exactly that, 17 or 18.5 million per season. You keep him as a top 5 paid safety. You get a little, short-term security for him while he's still playing at the top of his game, right? And a chance to kind of come back to the table in a couple of years if you feel that's necessary. I think the thing that makes you feel better about it is the health that he's had, right? Like, this is a guy who, over his first 3 seasons, missed 27 games. And over the last 5 seasons now, he's only missed 8 games. But, I mean, we can't lie. He plays a very, very physical style of football.
He does.
And for him to be special, he kind of has to be that way. And to an extent, right? I mean, his coverage grades were insane. Like, his passer rating against one of the better ones in the league so far this year. Great in coverage as well. But that's, for me, playing that style, I want to see, give it a 2-year extension. You potentially give him a chance to retire as a Charger with one more deal after that for a couple of years. But you keep him in LA and don't let him have to kind of test free agency in 2027. But the last one that was interesting was Donte Jackson. We're running a little bit out of time, but I think he's one of those guys where, 31 November, hey, if they want to give him the Bud Dupree 1-year extension, they want to give a 2-year extension, even at 31 with Steve Klinkskill still involved, I probably could be talked into that.
Oh, yeah, no question about it. I mean, we're talking 12 passes defensed, which, was tied for the team lead, and also, that was the team lead. 12 passes defense was the team lead for the Chargers, and he tied, Mr. Tony Jefferson in interceptions for the team lead in that statistic as well. I think I would be all for it. Probably somewhere in that $10 million range is what he's earned, just because he was one of the best coverage corners, in zone coverage in particular, in the NFL last year.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the age is a big thing. It would be interesting to see where those numbers are. I think he might be the hardest one to kind of put a number on out of these 3 guys because of his age, right? But yeah, 11th in coverage grade, 500 coverage snaps, 400 coverage snaps, 7th in snaps per reception at 16.8, only giving up a catch every 17 pass attempts, basically.
Yeah, he only allowed 24 receptions all year.
Yeah, I mean, it's really insane. I mean, there's a good chance they haven't played him out just at this age, but he was your best corner last year. And even aging, it'd be nice, to have that insurance policy in case, Tarheeb still takes a step back. You don't get that leap from Cam Hart, right, or you don't spend big on it this year. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. The good news is tomorrow's Fan Mail Friday, and we'll at least do 1 or 2 segments on Fan Mail tomorrow. If you guys want to get on the show, hit us up at LockedOnLAC on Twitter, at LockedOnChargers on Instagram, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. Or call into the voicemail line at 323-524-7924 and leave us your 30-second Chargers question there. The best way to never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. And if you want an ad-free version of the audio podcast, you can get that now in the Locked On Everydayer Club, which you can find in the show notes for $5 a month. Everything else stays the same. You'll always get at least 5 shows a week. And we have more than that. Maybe we'll put that in the Locked On Chargers exclusive Discord tonight, kind of what the plan is for the rest of the offseason, because we're planning on really, really upping how much content we're putting out, and we're the only people doing it every day already. So we'll keep on getting more and more out to you guys because we appreciate the everydayers out there, and tomorrow is about you guys. Make sure you hit us up for Fan Mail Friday, but until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.